Gaming Christmas is officially over. It's sad, I know, but fortunately us gaming-obsessed folks can at least spend the next month or so talking about E3 before we start dreaming about next year. And there was one thing about E3 2018 that I found really interesting. If E3 is gaming Christmas this year, every single present was either some huge amazing toy or a bike or a bunch of money, or it was an ugly sweater from your grandma that doesn't even fit. If I might mix metaphors, it was a roller coaster ride. Each conference either wowed or disappointed, or sometimes even a combination of both, but rarely was anything right in the middle. As I watched each one, I kept thinking, surely the next one will break this trend, but all the way up through the final showing, it was marvelous highs and mucky lows. So let's ride on that roller coaster one more time, if you would care to join me, and take a closer look at what might have been the most weirdly binary, all-or-nothing E3 ever. So E3 kicked off with EA's conference, and as usual, they're the only company that has largely failed to understand their audience and improve their shows. Fake banter, awkward celebrity influencers, focusing on boring things for much too long, all that stuff that the other companies have finally started to leave behind, it's still EA's bread and butter. The funny thing is though, this year it was toned down just enough that I was tricked for a brief time into believing that their conference was okay. Like, no joke, they've set the bar so low that just because very little of it was offensively awkward or boring, I thought, hey, not bad. I had to sit on it for a while to understand just how blah it was. Not terrible, just pitifully blah, which in the competitive world of entertaining and appeasing fickle gamers is just about as bad. Anthem was their main attraction, and it certainly looks very beautiful and very ambitious, but they're obviously trying their best to make it look as much like Destiny and as little like a BioWare game as possible, and reception has felt pretty lukewarm. Their other big game was Battlefield 5, yet despite releasing this year, they barely showed it at all. The biggest tidbit being the electrifying, revelatory announcement that it was hopping on the Battle Royale wagon. A particularly low point of the show was a demo of Command & Conquer Rivals, and it's like, okay, mobile game, I get you. Nothing wrong with mobile games, whatever, you gotta do them. But why? Why did this have to be one of the longest segments of the entire conference? It went on forever. Then, as expected, the whole show was dripping with insincere apologies for all the morally horrendous stuff they've been doing and self-praise for finally doing the right thing and donating to so many charities. The two smaller, more creative games they showed off, Unravel 2 and Sea of Solitude, were like a glorious yet fleeting breath of fresh air in the middle of a sea of the same old muck. And that really says something about their showing. Yeah, I know that digging this hard into a company is a little uncharacteristic of me. I normally like to keep things decently positive and not heap a lot of hate onto anything, but EA has crossed many lines recently, and at the very least, I'm gonna be honest about their E3 presentation this year. It was bland and boring, and most definitely one of the lowest lows of E3 2018. It was followed up, however, with what might have been the highest high of the expo. Microsoft's showing was just phenomenal, certainly the best one that I've seen from the company. No, they didn't bring a whole lot of exclusives that will convince you to buy an Xbox if you haven't already. But the handful of exclusives they do have, they brought them. They teased Halo, they revealed Gears, they showed off Ori and Crackdown and Forza, they even teased a new Battletoads. The rest of their games were multiplats, sure, but they had tons of first looks and even some complete surprise reveals that made the whole show so much more fun. I mean, the Cyberpunk 2077 reveal right at the end as the completely out of nowhere one more thing, the hype levels were through the roof. Perhaps best of all, though, Microsoft basically acknowledged their major weakness, their lack of exclusives, and addressed it by announcing the purchase of a number of new studios, including indie powerhouse Ninja Theory, as well as the creation of a brand new first-party studio. They also announced that they were indeed working on the next Xbox, and after that, the message was clear. We're still in the game, and we are throwing everything we've got into making the next system one that you're gonna want to buy. Between providing a bright outlook for the company, blowing us away with crazy reveals, and overall just putting on a great show with very few dull moments, Microsoft brought their A-game this year. Next up was Bethesda, and this was another high point of E3. And as you might expect, it was because the company brought games. They showed off the recently announced Rage 2, they gave us a full presentation on the recently teased Fallout 76, along with a very close release date. They announced the next Doom game with a teaser trailer and even a title. They announced DLC packs for Wolfenstein 2 and Prey, and then on top of all that, they even teased Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6. These were the teasiest of teasers, not substantial in the least, but once more, it was an injection of excitement to close out a great show. Now, there were certainly aspects of the Bethesda conference that were less than perfect. We got a decent dose of live show awkwardness and forced humor. For the record, I thought the Rage 2 musical number was most certainly a high point. But all that couldn't ruin such a good showing, and in fact, a lot of the humor came off as genuinely funny. The bit about putting Skyrim on every device possible with Keegan-Michael Key was terrifically self-deprecating. All in all, Bethesda was another high point this E3. But wouldn't you know it, 2 high points in a row? Nope, someone had to do something about that, and Square happily took the job. And it's not that their show was awful or anything, it really just wasn't worth much. There were a couple fresh teasers, but almost everything in the short half-hour presentation was represented elsewhere at E3. The trailer they showed for Kingdom Hearts was the same one we'd all just seen at the Microsoft conference, and that was supposed to be one of the biggest Square games at the event, if not the biggest Square game. Then of course the Final Fantasy VII Remake was a complete no-show, and while this was expected in light of recent reports on its troubled development, its absence was still a downer. By the end of the Square Enix presentation, there was just a feeling of, what was the point of that? Why did they bother? Will it even be worth tuning in next year? An undeniable low on this crazy E3 coaster. Fortunately, that coaster was ready to jet back up again at a moment's notice. Ubisoft was next, and again, we got another excellent show with tons and tons of games. The company had recently teased both The Division 2 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and naturally here they showed them off at great length. Assassin's Creed had a particularly juicy demo that, from my perspective, seemed to get more people hyped for an AC game than I've seen in years. Then they showed off a terrific cinematic for Beyond Good and Evil 2, and even gave us a little taste of the gameplay. They also announced a collaboration with Joseph Gordon-Levitt's company Hit Record to collect original art and music from fans all over the world to actually include in the game. They went over lots of other cool games as well, and brought the hype level for their upcoming Toys to Life game Starlink from 3 or 4 to 9 by revealing that none other than Fox Stinkin' McCloud with his R-Wing would be playable in the Switch version of the game. I mean, come on, that's just stupid cool. Due to the strategic announcing of their biggest titles before E3, there weren't too many surprises for us, but when all was said and done, it was a great showing from Ubisoft. Yet another high. Sony, though, was something of a unique case. Their presentation contained both highs and lows. See, game-wise, the show was great. They didn't have a huge number of titles, electing to save a lot of stuff for the show floor and the following streams, but what they did show was incredibly strong. A long cinematic and gameplay demo of The Last of Us Part 2 to kick things off, followed by a gorgeous demo of Ghost of Tsushima. Death Stranding finally gave us some gameplay, and while it didn't explain much and we're all just as confused as ever, if not more so, most of us are also more intrigued than ever. Then we had a reveal for the brain-bending control, and the reveal of the Resident Evil 2 remake gave us the kind of silly surprise that we always hope for at a good E3 show. The whole thing was capped off by a pretty darn impressive showing of their upcoming Spider-Man game, and it was easy to see that Sony did indeed bring the games this year. But unfortunately, there's more to an E3 presentation than just the games. There's the show part, and Sony's show was dreadful. And it started out strong, a peaceful church-like setting and a nice musical number leading into that deliciously long demo of The Last of Us. Then everything went south. They moved the whole audience to another theater, all while giving us the kind of casual interview chatter you find in a pre- or post-show, and constantly insisting that the show was about to start, guys. We're really close this time, guys, I swear. As though it hadn't started a half hour ago. We didn't know what was going on. When things finally got rolling again, we got another long musical number, and the following demo of Ghost of Tsushima was painfully slow, considering the pacing up to this point. Like I said, the game was gorgeous, but if you don't count the little teasers in the awkward talk show part, by the 42-minute mark, we had seen a grand total of 2 games. Then yeah, things did start to pick up a little. We saw a good number of games after that. But then after Spider-Man, after a mere hour and 10 minutes, including all that slowly paced filler content, the show just kinda ended. Just done. Bye. The audience was clearly confused. All over Twitter, people were wondering if it was actually over. Is this just another intermission like the first time? Are we going somewhere else? Nope. That's all. Presentation-wise, the Sony conference was a perfect lesson in what not to do and how not to pace your show. You can be all fancy and flashy and elegant all you want, but if your audience is consistently confused and irritated, you did something wrong. Lastly, we come to Nintendo, and in a way, this is another, I'm not gonna say mixed bag, it's more like a huge high and a huge low slapped together. If you're a big Smash fan, you probably thought this was the best E3 presentation ever. Half the direct was Smash talk, digging into all these great little details and revealing that every character ever is returning for Smash Ultimate. Then, of course, the biggest audience pleaser they possibly could have managed, the reveal of Ridley as a new fighter. It was probably everything you could have asked for. But if you're not a huge Smash fan, then I hope you're a huge Mario Party fan. because that was the only first-party game announced this year. They showed off the previously announced Fire Emblem title and some Xenoblade 2 DLC, which was cool, and I know that they've got a lot of other opportunities throughout the whole year to announce stuff. But even if you think it's silly, there's a pretty prevalent idea that if there's any one time of the year to really wow everyone, it's E3. And after last year, with its massive slew of surprises, a lot of people were expecting not just info on previously announced games, but reveals of new games. For a lot of people, that's kind of what E3 is about. And that's especially considering that compared to 2017, 2018 has been pretty light on non-port releases. There's not a lot to play in the second half of the year. We knew this Direct wouldn't be quite as surprise-heavy as last year. We knew that that was a particularly good year, but I mean, is it wrong to expect half as good? If not 4 big announcements, maybe 2? Or even 1? Something to play between now and the holidays? Mario Party. Nothing wrong with liking Mario Party. This one might even be the best Mario Party ever. I definitely want to play it. But most Nintendo systems get 2 or 3 of them. The GameCube had 4. It's not super exciting. And apparently Nintendo's investors didn't think so either, as the company's lack of surprises this year actually caused their stock to take a dip in value. All in all, Nintendo's E3 2018 presence wasn't quite as empty as it was back in 2016 when they didn't even have a show and only brought Breath of the Wild, but it was sorta close. When you're talking about big games with really broad appeal, this year was smash. Hey, like I said, at least it looks awesome. And Ridley! Ridley! So that was the roller coaster ride of E3 2018. I have no idea why it was nothing but crazy highs and lows. But I predict that next year it'll be the opposite. Like, every single show will be just okay. You know, like, pretty good. In the meantime, though, if you'll excuse me, roller coasters make me sick. Ooh.